Greetings, traveler. It is me again. Some time has passed since my last video, and I'm pretty sure I know what you all were thinking.
So you've already given up?
But actually, I'm still at it. If you're new to the channel, I'm making a little game about mail delivery. You play as a little fox girl. It's called Mailtale, and you can wishlist it on Steam. But only if you belong to the cool kids. So you guys sent me a lot of questions about different aspects of the game, and I was thinking about what would be the best way to showcase some of those, even though I'm already pretty deep into the development. So instead of just showing the progress, I will probably do a few videos on different topics like character design or what I have in mind for the story. And today's video's topic is level design, or to be more precise, how to build insane open worlds in Unreal. And little disclaimer, it's still a little indie game, so please don't expect too much. Insane levels in Unreal. So creating a level in a game is kind of like making a pizza. To start, we first need a dough or a basis that we can then place our ingredients on, like trees or bushes or rocks. I am taking a finished pizza to represent our dough in this example. And then to finish off, we are taking our level pizza and we are putting it in the oven to bake the lighting. We could use a height map terrain, since that's a built-in solution in Unreal and Unity. This would allow us to sculpt the terrain inside the engine and then also add textures and materials to it. Overall quite a handy approach, but it also comes with a bunch of pitfalls and inconveniences. Using this would mean that you can only really lower or raise your terrain, and creating really cool cliffs and overhangs becomes quite difficult. On top of that, creating a height map terrain can often be quite tedious and slow process, and you can't really go back and forth as much, can't really recycle parts of your level as easily. So I really like the terrain in games like Gothic 2 or Dark Souls, and the way that these games handle terrain is that they just hand model everything in a modeling software. So the way I'm going to approach this is that I'm just going to add a plane in Blender, and then I'm just starting to extrude it here and there and add new subdivisions, use the knife tool, use some of the sculpting tools in Blender, and then we can also use the proportional editing tool in Blender to get some more gestural shapes in our landscapes. So I finished up the base mesh for our little island here, and now the next step is to add some textures. I really like to use triplanar shaders to do this, and the way that a triplanar shader works is that we use the normal of the mesh and then we decide if we want to display grass, for example, or rock, depending on where the normal of the mesh points. We can start by dragging out the Z component of the normal vector and then directly plugging it into the base color. Next we want to replace the white parts with grass texture, and we are also using a rock texture for the sides. There are a few more nodes that we have to add to handle the correct mapping of textures, and then I'm also adding height blending to give us a more interesting transition. We can also add options to automatically place beaches. And now look at that! We don't have to do anything anymore. Everything is just textured automatically. And of course, this is only the Blender implementation. We also need to implement this shader in the game engine. And with that in place, we can now export our landscape to Unreal Engine and have a look at it. So this is how our base mesh for the island is looking inside the engine right now, and I think it works quite nicely, but it's still missing all the details, so let's add some smaller props. And I've already created some nature assets for this game, so here you can see some of them. I usually like to use ZBrush and Blender for the modeling part, and then I create hand-painted textures in Photoshop, but I don't really want to go too much in depth into the asset creation part, so I don't know, leave me a comment if you want to hear more about this. Yeah, I know that's illegal, let's just move on. And here we are back in Blender, and yes, we are going to place our props inside Blender. I wrote a little script that exports the entire Blender scene and writes down the object, transforms and other properties into an XML file, and then I made a little plugin for Unreal that imports the Blender scene. We just have to tickle this little button up in the editor up here. Oh, okay. So with the Blender importer in place, we can now start placing our props in Blender, and I'm just starting to place a few rocks here and there, a few bushes, a few I found that prop placement in Blender is actually quite efficient in terms of speed, and I actually slowed down the footage you're seeing right now by 5 trillion% to prove my point. I'm also changing the terrain a little bit here and there to fit the prop placement better. I really like how the cliffs are starting to look right now. So the reason why I initially created this workflow was to be able to place the assets in the same software that I'm using to create the terrain, but it turns out that placing props in Blender is just really cool in general. For one, you get to use Blender's awesome snapping tools, and you can also really easily recycle parts of your level. I could just take this entire island, for example, and just move it over there, and then maybe change up a few things here and there. So I really like how the island is starting to look right now, and I think we can by now export it to Unreal to add some finishing touches. So here we are back in Unreal, and I'm finishing off this island by adding some grass, some smaller plants, some flowers, and also some shells on the beach. And with that, I call the island officially finished. I actually don't really know what I'm going to do with this from a gameplay perspective just yet, but I will probably just come back at a later stage and add some items. You can find some treasure chests and maybe some enemies to fight. So I think I'm pretty much done for today. There are just a few minor things I wanted to talk about. Well, first off, thank you so much for the response to my last video. I didn't answer every comment, but I read every single one of them, and thank you so much for all the positivity and all the great feedback. Also, I wanted to let you know that I'm probably not going to release new videos very frequently. I just realized how much work YouTube is when recording this, and since I already have quite little time to work on the game, I just want to make sure the game gets finished and gets released. And so I really want to create new videos, but there are maybe some larger gaps in between. And lastly, please, if you are interested in the game, consider wishlisting it on Steam, because that helps a ton with Steam's algorithm, and also I just need to get more wishlists before I release the game. So with that said, I hope you have a beautiful rest of the day, and ciao baby!